Hi everyone. I know I already sent out one update this month. Sorry for the quick turnaround, but I do have one more quick update. Today we'll be talking about a coordinator opening, monitoring, the civics test, and a Supreme Court case that was heard. So here are some quick updates. Lisa Ellingson is a coordinator that currently services Blue Earth area in United South Central. Thinks she would rather hang out at a lake instead of hanging out with us. She will be greatly missed, but we also celebrate with her that she's worked hard and deserves this opportunity to retire. And so we are posting a position that will be working in Blue Earth area and United South Central. And I want to let all of you know about the requirements for that position in case anybody is interested. You must be licensed in special education, either as a teacher or related service provider. You have to have a good ability to work with others, a willingness to work hard and have a great time with a great team. She gets to work with some phenomenal people and they have a lot of fun. And you need to have a good understanding of special education in general or a willingness to learn, and happy to help teach you. If you're interested, you can send it to me, Megan, Anna, whoever you want, but send a resume and cover letter. If it gets to Anna, Megan, or myself, we will make sure it gets in the appropriate place for consideration. And you don't have to fill out an application as the posting says, but a resume and cover letter. And we would love to consider any applicants. And please help spread the word, tap somebody on the shoulder, and consider it yourself. Of course, there are always more monitoring updates. If you have any corrections you have not sent in, please get them in as soon as possible. They were almost all due January 15th. I'm on a really quick turnaround at this point. Once we get all of those finished, I will submit it to the Department of Ed as they look right now. Have to have that done by February 1st. The Department of Ed may have some further items that need to be corrected once we get into that progress. A new requirement this year is the Minnesota Department of Ed is also going to send us a list of files that we reviewed where they want us to send them essentially the whole file, the last 3 years worth of the file. I have not been through this in the past, but this is a new requirement. Really, they're looking to make sure that when we reviewed the file, we were honest about it and that they agree, because not all of these are real black and white, but that we were correct in the way that we monitored the files. So then the Department of Ed will also look to make sure to look for systemic problems that we have and develop corrective actions. I could picture that our systemic problems we had were timelines and progress reports. The reason why these are is that the other things we were able to fix, and so we fixed almost everything else, but we can't go back in time. So if a progress report wasn't done, we can't fix that, as well as if an IEP was late, we can't fix that. So I could picture those being some things we might have some corrective action plans on next year. So that is the current status within this. Something new this year is the civics test. This last fall, I shared this at the fall in service that it's a new requirement for students in the state of Minnesota. Students must receive a 30 out of 50 on this test. It was noted in the statute that Minnesota's districts may choose to record it on the transcript or may not. And even though there is a minimum requirement of 30, it cannot prevent a student from graduating if they don't get that 30 out of 50. At that time, we didn't know how this would look on the IEP, so we have a little more information. Recently, it's been added to SPED forms. If you work with high school students, you know this page. There is now a box for civics. So after the student takes the civics test and you get the results, the next time you redo the IEP, put the score that the student received and the date they completed that. And that would be all you have to do. Now comes the question of which students have to take it and are there any exemptions? Well, NLOT says there are no exemptions to any of the state required testing. However, we don't have an alternate assessment at this time. So here's my guidance at this time. If a student takes the MTAS for reading, then I believe the team should discuss whether or not the student should take the civics test or whether it would not be appropriate for the student to take the civics test. There's no place to document that. If you chose to, you could certainly document that in this box that the student will not take the civics test and the reason why. And that would be all you would need to do. So if you have any questions on that or want to discuss that further, feel free to drop me an email, give me a phone call, catch me in the hallway, and I'd be happy to talk further. An interesting thing is happening in the state of Minnesota right now, I wanted to make you aware of, or across the country, is that there was a special education case that was heard by the United States Federal Supreme Court on January 11th. And it's really unusual for any case to go to the Supreme Court, let alone a special education case, and certainly there could be impact for us in the future. So here is the case. Andrew, otherwise known as Drew, was a student attending public school in Colorado, and he was autistic, and he was making very minimal progress. The parents were very frustrated and didn't feel the process was working, and so they pulled the student out and sent him to a private school at $70,000 a year. And once Drew got to the private school, he made great progress and really excelled significantly. So the parents came back to the public school and said, you need to pay this $70,000 a year tuition bill. This went through all the lower courts, and in the lower courts, when it comes to this, they have always considered another Supreme Court case called Rowley, and Rowley happened in the early 80s, where it was determined that as long as the student had made educational benefit, the student, the district was not responsible and had done sufficient progress so they wouldn't have to pay in a case like this for the private school. And each of the lower courts held up the public school in this. However, the Supreme Court heard this. The reason that the Supreme Court picked up this case is that Drew had made progress, but it was minimal. It was extremely de minimis, very minimal progress, and made such great gains at the private school. There also have been some the Supreme Court felt there were inconsistent findings throughout the different lower courts about what the definition of educational benefit was, particularly since the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act has been updated twice since Rowley happened. So there's question of, is this definition of educational benefit enough, or do we need to have a higher degree of progress for students? So it was there were a lot of terms that were thrown out in this hearing. You can read the transcripts of the case, and there were a lot of different terms thrown out. My guess is really that there will be some changes in that definition of benefit. So what does that mean in Minnesota and in our districts? Well, I don't think it will have a lot of immediate change for us because Minnesota has really held districts to a higher standard. And however, usually when a case happens like this in the Supreme Court and raises the bar, it does result in an increase in the number of court cases that are testing whether or not they feel the district has helped the child make progress. So this is what the advice that we give to districts and has come about in court cases in the past is that goals have to be ambitious but reasonable to complete in 1 year because the statute is annual goal. Parents have to be given an opportunity to participate in due process. That's a really important part of it, which is why we're really preaching to you that you have to make sure you're documenting efforts to get parents to the meeting. Those prior written notices are really vital. So document any of the discussions that happen to show the parents had opportunities, to show that why you made a decision or didn't make a decision, whether the parents brought it up or somebody else brought it up, to talk about pushing that child to a higher level. Hold meetings if the student is not making progress, if they're not going to meet their goals and objectives, it's important to hold those meetings. And if a student is not making progress, whether it's on the goals or grade level progress, an exceptional number of failing grades, if a student is looking at being retained, if the student's making unsatisfactory progress in general ed, even if it doesn't appear to be part of the disability, it's important that you have discussions at the team meetings to talk about what that issue is, and then document that in the prior written notice. For example, um, I had somebody asked me at the paperwork party recently, a student had 28 tardies so far this year. Is that the school district's responsibility? Is that part of the special education team? Should we provide special transportation? What should we do? I didn't answer it very well. Um, it really needs to be a team discussion, tying it back. Can we tie it to the disability? We kind of had a team discussion at the paperwork party and felt it wasn't part of the disability, but that's the value of the team. And then that should be written in a prior written notice. Parents have a choice to not get their kid to school. Kids have a choice to not get to school. Um, that is one of the things that could impact education. And you have to make sure you're documenting that and those discussions that are held in a prior written notice. Um, Many times when parents complain and I go back and look at the case, I seem to be criticizing people. I'm not trying to criticize people, but oftentimes the issue is there's no documentation that shows all the hard work the team has done. So make sure you're documenting that, and then we can prevent ourselves from ending up at the United States Supreme Court, which is a good goal to have. So anyway, thank you so much. Again, I don't ever picture that we would end up there because our teams are doing a great job working with kids, and we have a pretty high standard, but it will be interesting, and be sure to be watching for the Supreme Court's decision this spring on the Andrew F. case. So have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.